Hello, hello, dear Sangha. Just a
This is okay. So you can hear me okay right now? I'm talking right now. You can hear me okay? House on? I'm sorry. Is the house on? Yes. So good morning. You can hear me through this. I think it's a very unusual day for me today. And I'm so happy um, to connect with the Sangha near and far that we have not been in contact with for, I think it's been almost 2 weeks. But uh, something has happened in those 2 weeks. And maybe it's not pointing at me. No, that's better. Uh, and it came to a culmination last night, so I'm not really able to speak on it clearly today. I have no problem speaking, as you know. um, but at this moment, I just really don't know where to go. Because I did get a message around 3 o'clock this morning, and it has taken until now for me to even be able to put my feet back on the ground and kind of function in a somewhat normal way. Because I got a clear message and direction for where we need to go and what we need to do, and how important it is for every person to be in their place. You can have a band of some of the greatest musicians in the world, but if the piano player is trying to play the violin and the bass player is trying to beat the drums and the tuba player is trying to sing, then it may not come out so good. It's not because the skill set wasn't there. It's not because all the instruments they needed weren't there. But it was because people weren't in their proper places. And one can see someone else do something and say, well, I could do that. I could do that better. So it's not just a matter of even having the skill set and being in the proper place. But there is something vital and alive that we bring even to the skill set that has to run deep inside of you. You know, deeper it is when it comes forward, the further it can go, the sharper it can, so that it can penetrate and meet its mark. And so I'm getting this stream of information this morning. And part of it was that I am now in the wrong place. This doesn't mean that I'm going anywhere, not that wrong place. But I do have an unction to do something. And to do it, I have to step back from something else that I do. And I said, well, I'm not ready. I'm not prepared. And it said, but you've had years to prepare, to be ready. The voice said, not my fault. And then I had a review of my life. It could be a review of my life. I've been reading so much psychology today stuff that I'm not sure whether it's a review of my life at all, because the more I read, the more it tells me I can't trust my memories. I can't trust what information I'm taking in. I can't trust, the uh, uh, what I think is factually happening. The information coming in through the sense gates of it is getting peculiar. That could be a good thing or not so good a thing. But in reviewing my life, it started at 3 o'clock this morning, and maybe it's because um, I've been doing some meditation, and I was following Ajahn Brahm. He said, "Past life, please." He said, "When you get in that past life, please, go back further." And I wasn't going back further, but today I got a review of this life, and somehow it was a different story than the one I've been telling. I plan to write a book on my life, just share my experience, because I think it's important to review their life. I'm glad I didn't put that book out now. 'Cause, I'm not sure if I think of it after this morning in the same way that I had in the past. You know, they said that if a Buddha was thrown into a lake of swords, that the swords would turn into a field of flowers because his mind would transform the negativity or the adversity and he would see it a different way. That might not literally be true, but it gives us a direction in which to look. And I've always said that, you know, I think I've had a pretty good life. I talk about some things like a mother whose love I couldn't recognize. I won't say she didn't love me. I'll say I couldn't recognize the love. I've talked openly about being raped. I've talked about losses in my life. I've talked about being talked about in my life, called the N word and a whole lot of other things. Not even by people who hate me, but by people I serve. But in all of this life, it helped me because I could identify with the suffering of anyone that I met. It was like I could be you because I'm well acquainted with suffering. I know that I had a standard that I could raise in the face of suffering. And it was my own mind pointed towards forgiveness, pointed towards courage. And it always sustained me. Now, the forgiveness and the courage came from a great thirst to live a spiritual life. And you can't just say you want to live one. The living is in the doing. You have to actually live it. And so necessarily suffering comes. Otherwise, how could you know that you live a spiritual life? We could say, oh, I try to be good. I say the right things. You know, I go to the right places. I walk like this and I dress like that. And that makes me spiritual. But when one can do the things that we talk about, like tolerating a slight and overlooking a fault, when one can be in a place where they know that they're not accepted, when one can know that they will live and die before they see certain changes in how others are treated when one can know, as long as one is in this world, if one is not acting out, another is. So there won't be heaven on earth. Heaven is heaven, governed by, ruled by, expressed by a certain mind stream, a certain vibration, as Bhikkhu Bodhi says. Um, and every now and then we hear a strand of that sound here, but it's not here. So there's a song. And I like the song because it's just a true song. A secular song that says, I'm a creep, I'm a weirdo. What am I doing here? I don't belong here. And I like the song because I felt that way at one time in my life. Just didn't fit in. Just, the world was too mean. Just on and on and on. But I'm so thankful that I found the Dharma that took me out of my perplexity. And for a long time, I resisted some of the things there. That definitely goes for some people I know, but that doesn't go for me. Because I'm the good girl I am. Mm. Could always justify my own way of living in the world. That I could see the faults of everybody else. But in time, I came to see that I was right where I belong, whether you ever know it or not. Part of that is to one's own self be true. The other part is to understand causality, cause and condition. So in this dream that I had last night, everything was it was like bizarro world. In the in the dream, I felt excruciating pain because in the dream my husband left me for someone. Now, I left him for the Dharma, but in the dream he left me for someone. And I'm going to tell you that pain was every bit as real as if it was my lived experience. I woke up crying. The pain, rolling in pain. The pain was so great. And then I realized that that was a dream. And then I realized, oh, but that's not what happened. And yet the pain was still there. It was a real bodily pain, real mental pain over a dream. And in that dream, we also had a house. And we sold that house, the particular house that showed up in the dream. And we made a good profit off of it too. But in the dream, I lost the house. And there was such shame and such pain of loss. And I was also crying because of that and feeling that pain so deeply. And so I had all of these. I had like, um, what do you call it when you have like, episode after episode on TV? Uh, yeah, I had a This Is Your Life binge, but it was the opposite of everything that I experienced. And yet the pain of it all was so real. And then I started thinking about this life and how this life is like a dream. And the things that we experienced yesterday, the ways that we think are tied into something. What? We don't even know. Tied into little bits of conversation that we hear. Tied in to the uh, silent messages that we get and the places that we go and the people that we are with. That plant a seed or create a field, Field, and when it gets watered, many things grow. And we start sifting, sorting, and dividing. This is bad, and this is good. And she's bad, and he's good. And before you know it, we have a field of wildflowers. That's the power of likes and dislikes. But it was wonderful to know that when we are captured by views based on views that we held at the time we saw something or heard something or felt something or thought something, that if we could know that that is just a momentary perception of the full scope of what is going on, and if we could hold ourselves in that moment, being settled at a certain place of peace, we would not get caught up in it and perpetuate continuing fear, continuing dread, continuing uh, applying, laying a view upon a view. That means I've got to get up and do something because don't you see what they are doing? And each side sees a different they doing a different thing. And whatever you see that's more closely aligned to the way you think, you latch down on that. And the other thought becomes that which you must uproot, eradicate, quash, put down. And that's how you end up in situations like we find ourselves today. I have, I could say I have a party along whose line I vote, but I am not any one thing. The minute we lay out that's what this party is about and that's what that party is about, we know we're headed towards trouble. The beginning of the division until we find ourselves so polarized, so stuck in our own view that I'll kill you over it. I'm so afraid that for you to have something is to take something from me that will do just about anything. And it all arises from our attachment to our views. And so the Buddha said we have to lay an axe to the root of that tree. You wonder how can we do it at a time when we're so disjointed, disconnected, polarized. Maybe the first way that we can do it is to stop calling each other names. Stop calling each other by our labels. I'm a this and you're a that. So just try to see each other as fellow human beings, trying to live a life of peace and purpose in the world. So I was thinking about how I would try to put this into practice this year. And I decided the first thing I'm going to do is stop calling myself Buddhist. Well, most of people don't know what a Buddhist is, to tell you the truth. I was checking on a new rate for insurance for Heartwood on Friday. And after I gave him all the information that he needed to give me a quote, he called me back. He said, uh, I don't know how to bring this up, but the underwriter told me that since you all are monks, did you want to get molestation insurance? I said, and I said, and I apologize for this. I said, no, we're not Catholics, we're Buddhists. and and then I started thinking about the trouble we're having in paradise, right? And I said, now see, that right there, it's just like that. And I called him back. And I said, and then but when I said that, and he said, "Oh, we thought you were Catholic." You know, and he said, "Okay," and then he hung up because they were going to require that we take it. um, that's sad. But I called him back and I apologized. I said, "This, I wasn't thinking in a disrespectful way. I was just trying to be clear that we're not the group having a lot of problems, you know, because I know the insurance is pretty expensive, and we don't need that. So we don't have children here. We don't, you know, we just I think we're okay. And if somebody gets caught up in that, I'm not defending them. So no, we don't need it. Um, but just seeing um, danger in the slightest fault is what I'm saying. I just divided us. And I lumped the whole group into one category, just like that. There was no intention in my heart regarding it. I was clarifying, but it's just like that. And I wouldn't want someone to like just lump me in one basket around something that Buddhists do and say, "Oh, but she's a Buddhist." So I was thinking maybe that's not so useful now. Just I don't have to say I'm a Buddhist. Just live like one. Like have the mind, cultivate, develop, and express the mind of a Buddha. That's like what's important. And then later, if you want to tell them something, and they say, "Oh, that's powerful," who said that you could tell them Shakyamuni Buddha or any of the later Buddhas and Bodhisattvas? Just you could just share it. I believe that we have Buddhas who are not even Buddhists. And you think that Buddha thought of himself as a Buddhist, or that Jesus thought of himself as a Christian. They were just living the truth until they became the truth. That's what's important. So this year, I would like to encourage us to focus on what it is to live like one who is awake. And that's a moment by moment thing. We've been chanting for the last 9 days during the novena. And saying the past is already gone. In the future, don't hope in the future because the future hasn't come. But we can hope in the present moment. And the way we express hope in the present moment, it's all about our own thoughts, our own speech, and our own actions. Because at any given time, we're acting out what we have the most faith in the moment. And so we're not going to do a book study on Tuesdays this year. This year we're going to do 50 weeks of putting a particular uh, practice into practice. So every Tuesday we will have a subject that to express it requires a corresponding action. And we'll spend that week seeing how well we do with that. And I want to make sure that we have enough time to not just walk it out, but also to talk it out. So I don't know, sister, um, maybe I should have talked to you about this before, but it just came up. Uh, a way that we can break out into groups on Tuesday, and within in the sanctuary, we'll also break out into a couple of groups, at least 2 groups, maybe more, so that we can talk about it. And we'll get the topic on the first day, on the first Tuesday. And we'll spend no more than 20 minutes thereafter in a group discussion on the new topic. The other 40 minutes will be spent in our breakout groups. We're talking about what the decision to walk in that way meant, what it meant to me this week. And we can talk about what we discovered about ourselves, or what we discovered could happen if we put it into practice. Sometimes, nothing beats a failure but a try. Sometimes you don't succeed at first, and you have to try and try and try again. So some of it is about learning how to make a mistake and try and try and try again until you get it right. All of a sudden, something drops into your consciousness and, now I see. Now I understand. Last night I had an example of what it is to be in a hell realm. I was in a hell realm from 3 this morning. Just dreaming up stuff. That had nothing to do with reality. But it came out of my mind. And the only thing I had to steady me during that time was the Dharma that I know. And I put my whole world back together. This year, we're going to really embody the Dharma, those of us that want to. This is a real commitment year that will have far-reaching effects in your homes, in your communities, and even beyond. What we see playing out are just the delusions in people's minds. But if we sing that song, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. And you know what started this whole train of thought? Was when we were meditating a couple of weeks ago. And I fell asleep. Or at least I wasn't really consciously conscious. But they tell me in the group that I yelled out a Kia. Like a quiet. And then in whatever was going on in my dream, Buddha Master was fussing at me. And I was like, but why can't I kill him? And that let me know that there was some kind of a seed. You see what I'm saying? We all know how to act, how to think. We know what to say and what not to say. Some of us can't help it, and we say what we shouldn't say. But some of us know how not to say what we shouldn't say. You can think it, but you can't say it. But there comes a place that one has to actively uproot those seeds. And that's where we are. And what happens in the future for this country and the world depends on who we want to be in the world. Whether we want to give up fear, whether we want to give up anger, whether we want to give up hatred, whether we want to surrender our privilege till we're like all on a level playing field. Whether we want to take the time to understand what causes people to think a certain way. Products of our culture, products of our history, products of our environment, products of our mind state. If we want to see something different in the world, we have to be something different in the world. There was a song, I'm not going to sing it today, but I used to sing it all the time in the church. It would say, I'm going to lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside and study war no more. I ain't going to study war no more. I ain't going to study war no more. And I'm asking you to go with me on this journey. We have talked and talked and talked. Me and Pannavati have talked for 20 years. Talked and talked and talked. But the time is over for talking. Actually, it doesn't even take that much. It's decision time. These 7 days of novena have been transformative. Or 9 days, I attended 7 of the 9. It's been transformative for me. As I would watch, as they work with the bowl to contain the names of people who had requested prayer or whose prayers had been requested for. And as each person read that name and held that name to their chest, it put me in touch with every person who was sick and suffering. It reminded me how short life is. And then it's over. it reminded me that there was a time in my life where I suffered deeply because of my choices. I made a decision I didn't want to do some of them, so I stopped. But there are some people who haven't reached that place yet. They haven't suffered enough. So they haven't made that choice. But I can't look down on them because there was a time that I hated. There was a time that I was dishonest. There was a time I didn't bother to educate myself about real conditions. There was a time I depended on others to lead me, and some of them were, reputable people, and some were not. I used to be in mortgage banking, so I don't have to say anymore. And I was just thinking about some of the notions I had. I watched a show on television the other night, and as this guy was talking, it's called the Good Lawyers or something like that on CBS All Access. But they deal with a lot of the current events that are based on ideas about how to be successful in life. And I listened to some of the things that they were saying, and I said, I used to think that way. I was taught by the wrong people. Yeah, they were the successful people, and like they appeared to be successful, but the thinking was not correct. And I regretted my career in banking. I think entirely different now. But at that time, I thought that was wise. I thought that was smart. But I don't now. But there's some still with that mindset. How can I hate them? I understood and understand that in some ways they are good people. But that right there, that's a wrong understanding. So if we could stop judging people by one particular way they think about one thing, even if that's the thing that's really against you, can you do that? Can you see their goodness in other ways? Can you hold them in such a way that it leaves a door open for changing that unwholesome view that they may hold in some areas? That's the only way good can overcome evil, by being its best. We have to use our own proven record. So that's what we're going to do on Tuesday. Thursday is also going to change, and I don't have that all together yet, but I will by Thursday. And shortly, something else, some other work I have to do will be coming forward. So I want to say to you, we're talking about what we're going to do for 2021 and beyond. But I'd like to ask you to just let your mantra be, what shall I do today? What shall I do today? And approach every person just today, in every situation just today, without fear, without malice, without hatred, without greed, without envy, with kindness, with generosity, with patience, with honesty, with integrity, and see what a difference a day can make. The song says 24 little hours. May you be well and happy and peaceful. May no harm come to you, no danger. May you always be able to meet the inevitable difficulties.